Reserves, the gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I thank the representative from New York for yielding me the customary 30 minutes, and I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Today, we are here to consider a rule providing for consideration of H.R. 3807, the Relief for Restaurants and Other Hard-Hit Small Business Act. This legislation gives a check to the Small Business Administration without accountability or oversight mechanisms, or even taking into account SBA's feedback. Mr. Speaker, this bill appropriates an additional $55 billion to restaurants and small businesses, none of which is paid for. According to the Congressional Budget Office, as much as $340 billion in unobligated funds from various COVID relief legislation is available for expenditure. But we're not reallocating those. Instead, we would be relying on more deficit spending to provide these sums. Structurally, this bill is not going to work. There's a lot of money, and it seems that Democrats just want to throw it into the wind. Because when you look at how the funds are being distributed, this bill will not fix the problem. This is something that could have been addressed had the bill gone through the committee process. Because this bill is not immediately or responsibly paid for, it would be further fuel the inflationary crisis, which currently sits at a 40-year high of 7.9%. Inflation is the #1 problem facing small businesses, according to them. That's what they're saying. Instead of pushing through drastic increases in inflation-inducing deficit spending, we must work together to advance pro-growth policies that empower small businesses to operate independently without burdensome regulation. I need to point out the political game Democrats are playing this session. They are proposing bills that have titles that make them seem like common sense bills, but really they are disingenuous attempts to fix real problems. This was true of last week's insulin bill, and it's true of this bill. What's worse is they know that they are not coming up with real solutions. That's why we are now looking at yet another bill that has not been through the committee process. There's been no transparency, no opportunity to discuss, no public or minority input, and has real flaws as a result that will only exacerbate the problems my colleagues have created. My Democrat colleagues do not want to negotiate with Republicans or allow any input from anyone to come up with a bill that would actually help people. It is also why my colleagues did not take up the Entree Act, which was introduced last summer at a time when restaurants really needed it. That bill was also aimed at helping restaurants and small businesses recover from the damage done by the pandemic with proper oversight and constraints, and didn't include discriminatory language that prioritized certain groups based on criteria other than need. That eventually the Supreme Court had to put a stop to. Now we need to be focusing on the crises that are going on, that are going to become problems for restaurants this year: workforce and inflation. We are still seeing help wanted signs all over the country. Businesses are desperate for a workforce. Congress needs to stop paying people to stay at home and encourage them to work. And inflation is hitting every single corner of the economy. Between increasing prices on all goods and the effects we're already starting to feel in the food industry from the Russian invasion of Ukraine, consumers are going to start feeling the pain. And unfortunately, when you are trying to save money, going out to eat is not one of the first things a family typically does. We need to be getting ahead of these issues, not coming up with insincere attempts under the guise of COVID relief. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I oppose the rule and the underlying bill, and I ask members to do the same, and I reserve.
Gentlewoman.